everyone. I'd just like to introduce people to this guy, Michael Bernicia. Absolutely fantastic, brilliant guy. Really got some amazing information to share with people. So I'm promoting him, and I'm going to leave you the link to his website here, and also a couple of links to a couple of videos, and also a DVD that he and a friend of his have made called I think it's called The Great British Mortgage Swindle, which is, again, incredible information, and people do need to start waking up. Now, I have stated previously in my videos that according to the way corporate law operates, everybody in Britain is dead. And Michael of Bernicia confirms this. He states exactly the same. And as I've been explaining, it's time for the dead to rise, because we're not dead, we're alive and kicking, and it is time for the British people to really stand up. And as a key nation on this planet, and being governed for over 1,000 years, again, exactly as I've been saying in my videos, Michael explains exactly the same. Over 1,000 years of tyranny. That yes, it is time for us to stand up and to explain to this tyranny that has been governing us, and through the power that it's gained in oppressing us and robbing the people, the native people of Britain, which today constitutes people of various ethnicities and faiths, but nonetheless we are all British. Everybody born on this land is a British born native citizen, and we're still being oppressed by the same tyranny, the same force of tyranny that has taken control of our country for hundreds of years, centuries. So it is time for us to challenge that tyranny, and that's why the people of Britain, as with all the so-called great nations on this planet, the vast majority of the populations of the great nations, especially America, are very heavily subjugated and oppressed. And exactly so, that same tyrannical force of power can go and oppress and subjugate people of other nations, which is exactly what they've been doing on the strength of our taxes. The money that they extort from us is paying for their terrorism and tyranny in other nations. And until the people of nations like Britain and America can stand up, until the dead can rise, okay, then this tyranny is not going to end. And that's why it is so important that the people of Britain especially now reclaim what is ours and what is ours by right, and to remove these swindlers and tyrants from office through the law, lawful. It's a lawful revolution, isn't it? Because we are dealing with the revolting, because the force of power that is governing us right now is a revolting force of power. It has revolted against common law, universal law. It has fundamentally revolted against it, and it has fundamentally revolted against all our rights. Now, we did manage to re-establish those rights through the losses and suffering and traumas of 2 world wars after centuries and centuries of oppression. And the British people finally established our human rights and our workers' rights and all kinds of rights. Rights for the environment, okay, rights to healthcare, everything we established. And since Thatcher, really, we've had a revolt, an ongoing revolt against our rights. Now, I have repeatedly expressed my concerns about Brexit, because the main function, as far as I understand it, Brexit, is to remove all our rights That is the main purpose and function of it. That's why I didn't support it, even though I don't like the EU. I feel it's corrupt and corporate. I do like the people of the EU. I do like the rights that the people of the EU have established and that the EU is committed to upholding. And as I've explained, when we entered the EU, we were an independent nation with our own productivity, our own factories. We made our own clothes and shoes and tools. We had a steel industry, a coal industry. We were, to a great degree, a self-sufficient nation, you see. And we were in the same condition that 80% of the British population were living under during enclosure, because, and this is another important point that the people of Britain still don't seem to understand. It's like we're suffering from amnesia, collective amnesia, about our own people's history. Because, yes, the Queen, it seems, is allowed to remember every one of her ancestors going back to the year dot and have portraits of them hanging up in her galleries, whereas we, the people, a lot of people don't even know who the great-grandparents were, you know. We are encouraged to trash our own history, our own legacies, our own heritage of our culture and our law and our rights. And all of them were trashed during enclosure, when the 80% of the rural population that formed the British population were stripped of their common lands, which was our social security, were robbed of our productivity, that we created our own clothes, and, you know, all of them suddenly taken over by private factories. And still the British people do not realise that it's estimated that around 2 million people lost their lives directly through enclosure, after enclosure, the 1750 Enclosure Acts, that did strip people of lands. People were starved, people were hung for hunting a rabbit. You know, a man's life was worth less than a rabbit. People were prevented from foraging in the forest. Fruit and nut trees were systematically chopped down throughout Britain. These are facts. These are facts. And they were on a population call in Britain. They were suddenly afraid of the power of the people, having witnessed the revolution in France, and there was great consternation that the people of Britain, yes, they could be roused up to, you know, attack the establishment, and so there was that going on as well. But we're talking about a huge theft of common lands, that the sale of those lands often brought directly by the rising middle classes, in order to procure a vote, because that you needed to own some land in order to have a vote. And there was a push among the middle classes, the rising middle classes of those days, growing rich on colonialism and the new factories and what have you, pushing for their rights to vote, you see, or have a seat in Parliament. So with the loss of our common lands, basically, we lost our social security, and we lost, through the takeover of productivity, the control of productivity, we lost our rights to be self-sufficient in terms of making our own pots, our own clothes, our own utensils, tools, you name it. We made it all. And so after World War II, the people of Britain realising, well, we can't go back to the common land system, but we're going to have the equivalent within our economy. So the British economy is going to provide social security, national health care, education, social housing, and services and nationalised industries. We're going to have a living wage. Nobody is going to be forced into slavery, so nobody is going to be forced to work for less than the basic standard of living that subsistence would have provided. So subsistence was replaced by social security, unemployment benefit, disability benefit, pensions, all of these things, that was replaced by social security that represents the subsistence system and the community that we once had. And so by the time Britain entered the EU, Britain as a nation was in the same condition as the people of Britain were prior to enclosure, in the sense, as a nation, Britain, we made our own produce. You see, we were capable, we weren't dependent on China to buy our clothes and shoes, or wherever to buy our tools, you see. But since we entered the EU, slowly, and especially since Thatcher, rapidly, everything's been corporatised. The factories in Britain have all closed down. The few that actually remain are no longer owned by British families. Because let's face it, after World War II, though Britain was described as a socialist country, we were actually a socio-capitalist country, and that is what I have always been promoting, is this understanding of socio-capitalism, that as a species that is what we are, and socio-capitalism aren't meant to be divided and at war with each other. We're supposed to be working together, but we've got this imposition of corporate capitalism, which is basically a monopoly scam, okay, and it's a global affair. So you're talking about a global force of power, and actually tyranny, that has taken over our family-owned, individually-owned British factories that were paying decent wages to British workers, that were paying taxes to the British government. Instead, we've got these corporations who barely pay any tax, who have got everybody on 0-hour contracts now, as many people as they can on 0-hour contracts. So that means they've got no obligation for maternity leave or pensions, or, you know, basically none of the workers' rights. We are being encouraged to sign those away in order to work on a 0-hour contract. When we sign that contract, we are basically giving up all of our rights, our workers' rights. That's what the 0-hour contract is all about. And it is really serious. It means that as an employee, you are now working not according to the law of Britain, but according to the rules of these global corporations that are fundamentally opposed to human rights. And human rights stand in their way because human rights cost money to them, you see. They leech on their profits because human rights demand a fair wage and all kinds of provisions that the corporations aren't prepared to fund, because they just want to take. They think that they can operate, take, and giving nothing back. That is not the way that life operates. So they are actually operating against life itself. And that's why these corporations are damaging our planet and simultaneously robbing us of any power to be able to really stop them, even though in our natural intelligence is explaining to us that, look, this just cannot continue. The very planet's at stake here, but regardless, they will plough on, because, you know, we're dealing with stupidity. Stupidity is a very dangerous thing. It's a very dangerous thing. If an intelligent species is living stupidly, that species is doomed. There's no two ways about it, you see, because intellectual intelligence, and the ability to empathise, to have compassion, these are the specialities of our species, that we are here to look after our planet, to look after each other, to have a nice time, to enjoy our lives in, as I understand, life after life. Okay, and as the ancient British people knew, that's what the Druid culture all revolved around, and many cultures revolve around this understanding of reincarnation. So, but regardless of whether you believe in that, nonetheless, while we're alive, we 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 have these laws that are there to uphold our rights. Now, Michael of Bernicia, he shares, as I say, very, very important information. And this here is, he's written a piece about Brexit, exactly confirming everything that I've been saying about how Brexit is specifically to remove our rights. But he explains it, you know, in no uncertain terms, according to German law, which I didn't know about. You know, this is what I've learned from Michael recently, but he has confirmed my worst suspicions, as I've been sharing repeatedly, that Brexit means that, yes, we are going to lose all of our rights. And so he is explaining here. I'm going to leave the link. I'm not going to read you the whole thing, okay? But it is a very, very, very serious issue, and we need to understand. We need to understand as a nation, you see, because as I've explained, I've got nothing against leaving the EU. If that's what Britain wants to do, to leave the EU. But actually, I am not happy to be leaving the EU in the state that we're in now. You know, when we entered the EU, we were a self-productive, independent nation. Now we're leaving the EU, you know, what do we produce? We're totally dependent. We don't even produce enough food for ourselves. Apparently we've got to be dependent on the USA now for food. And when your back's up against the wall as a nation and you've got no food deals, then, well, all right then, you can have a food deal with us as long as you let our American health insurance companies, corporations, who are already screwing the American people blind with healthcare being the biggest source of bankruptcy. 68% of all bankruptcies in America, check the figures, are due directly to people suddenly suffering ill health, right? They now want to do a deal in return for supplying us with their toxic food to run our NHS. You know, these are very, very, very serious issues. Now, as Michael explains here, the EU Withdrawal Bill, despite its aim to repeal the 1972 Act, openly seeks to replace UK law with EU law, in spite of 12 years of public knowledge of the German Constitutional Court's ruling that EU law will always be subject to German law, which Britain will be treasonously subject to, via a quagmire of political deception and multimedia mind control that has used the Brexit hoax to disguise the criminal dissolution of the trial by jury common law. In effect, the UK is neither staying in the EU nor is it leaving, so neither Brexiteers and Remainers are getting what they voted for in the referendum, but they will all lose the rights of our ancestors fought and died to secure, protect and maintain the millennia in the event the Withdrawal Bill is enacted. Irrespective of your age, colour, race, religion and culture, it's time to unite and shout from the rooftops that Brexit means German law by the back door and the abolition of the trial by jury common law system by deception, cloaked as it is in an Act of Parliament that is tantamount to treason against the British people by every member who voted for its enactment. Just knowing these demonstrable facts isn't anywhere near enough during these most troubled of times, because Action is required without delay. But the urgency of this imperative has thankfully given rise to the new Chartist movement, which aims to achieve the following objectives without breaching the peace or infringing the law of the land. So we have to restore the supremacy of trial by jury common law system, to end poverty and austerity by issuing an interest-free currency, to abolish the family courts and protect children from predatory paedophiles at every level of society, to restore and maintain the lawfulness of the police and the military's operations in the realms of defence and peacekeeping on these shores, to replace the corrupt legal system with a restored trial by jury common law system, nullifying miscarriages of justice wherever they take place, to restore justice in the courts and prosecute all corrupt judges, barristers, solicitors, accountants, auditors and bankers who have profited from institutionalised criminality at the expense of the people for decades. So, you know, check out the new Chartist movement. I'll leave a link to it under this. I've had a look at the new Chartist movement. Very, very promising. And as I say, these are the things, exactly as I've been concerned about. These are the things that concern me about Brexit, you see. That we are losing our rights. That this Brexit was never, ever designed, ever, for the British people. It certainly isn't going to deliver us sovereignty. It's the very opposite of sovereignty. And it is a swindle. It's a swindle, you know. It is treason. It is treason. And one of my Brexit videos exposes exactly that. The treasonous Tory plot is exactly what it is about. And it is really time for people to wake up now. We cannot stay in this so-called comfort zone that we're presently living in. It isn't a comfort zone. People are losing security of income, security even of their homes. People, this is not peace. This isn't peace. The only peace that's there is for the ultra-rich, the people who are in control. It's them that are enjoying the peace, the silence of the people, the silence of the slaves in their invisible chains. Okay, burdened with their fears and their worries, and being robbed and being powerless to do anything about it. But we can do something about it, and we need to do it lawfully and peacefully. Okay, we do need to do that. We need to understand that, look, if you stay sat in your home, don't think they're not going to come knocking on your door and at some point you're going to lose your home. Okay, do not think for 1 minute that we are not the last living line of defence for the next generation, because I tell you, once they get all this stuff in, there's going to be no hope for the children of tomorrow. As I say, the people of today don't even know their own history going back 1,000 years. Most of the people don't even know it. So how do you expect this generation, brought up on the corporate diet of media, fake news and so-called entertainment, distractions upon distractions, they're going to be lost, and with it our planet, and they are following this evil Agenda 21 that again Michael talks about in his talks, that they do want to kill 80% of the global population. That is what they want to do, by any means necessary, any which way. They're not going to come round and shoot you in the head, but they'll poison you, they'll give you inadequate health care, you know, all kinds of means. They'll drive people to suicide. Austerity has murdered 120,000 British people. It has, that's the official figure. 120,000 British people dead directly through austerity. I don't see people going crazy about that. I see people going crazy with their xenophobic fears. But what about the 120,000 British people who are no longer with us, and only because of a government, this Tory government, economic policy, the same Tory government that gave us this referendum for Brexit, that was never going to be for us, but always for them. And the other point that I've pointed out is that actually, had we stayed in the EU, London was no longer going to really be able to operate as an independent state within Britain, because its whole banking offshore accounts were all under heavy investigation and scrutiny by the EU now. So, you know, there's a lot of things that people really need to think about. And as I say, we are on the brink of the edge of that cliff, and it is time to take a step back, you know, and then turn around and to make 2 steps forward. That is what we need to do, because otherwise we're gone. And he is so right. Michael is exactly right. They will be stealing away everything that our forebears worked for and sacrificed so much for and lived literally through hell for. And it's a hell that the next generation won't need to imagine. Unfortunately, they'll be knowing it. They'll be knowing it when the factory prison has taken place of social security and job seeker, you know, this job seekers allowance. These things, sorry, we need to sort this out now. We need to sort it out. We do need to unite. As he says, regardless of your ethnicity, your faith, whatever, all British citizens need to unite and stand up against this evil Brexit that they have forced upon us. We do need, I would advise, as I have advised, look, stay in the EU, scrap Brexit, let us focus on rebuilding our nation, re-establishing our industries, new technology, eco-industries. Let's do it. Then we can leave the EU, okay? When we are self-sufficient, we can turn around and say, yeah, sorry, EU. But we need to focus attention on ourselves. We need to be prepared. Nobody just leaves home with a rucksack to go and live under a brick bridge with a begging bowl, which is basically is what's happening to us, we the people, and they're removing all of our rights. This is so serious. I mean, we are talking treason. We are talking treason. And as I say, unless the British people can stand up, there's no hope for the people of the rest of the world who are equally suffering. Look at Iraq. Look at Iraq. It is on my conscience as a British citizen. I feel ashamed. I carry the shame that this Parliament, who I've never voted for, I've never voted for any of them in my life, okay? Sorry, once, the first time when I was 20 and I voted for Labour. And after that, never again. Never voted for any of these treasonous entities. But look what they have done in my name. Look what they have done to the Iraqi people. When I look at the women of Fallujah have been told to stop having babies because of the impact of depleted uranium. That the MOD, the minister from the MOD, had lied to British Parliament saying that DU weapons had been through the Geneva Weapons Review. And then 10 years later, he's having to apologise to Parliament because it turns out that no, the DU weapons have never been through a weapons review. So therefore Britain has endorsed and been responsible for endorsing weapons of mass destruction to be levelled against the people of Iraq, a country we were supposed to be liberating, because apparently Saddam had weapons of mass destruction when it turns out he didn't. But we've used those and caused such suffering. And this country, these tyrants are responsible for it. These bankers, all of these people who've been feeding on the filth of their crimes and lies and tyranny, they need now to be compelled to spend money on Iraq to compensate the people, to clean up their filth. And far from there being too many people on this planet right now, this planet needs every pair of hands it can get to clean up this corporate filth. But they want to kill us. They want to operate. They think that they can survive on the remnant of the planet with under 500 million people. But they're not going to survive, because those who have less, even that which they have shall be taken away, and to those who have more, more shall be given. Okay, well, we have more people and we need more life on this planet, and we can build a paradise on this earth. You know, this universe did not ask humanity to go forth and multiply so we could all be killed off in some giant cull to satisfy the designs and ridiculous plans of some corporate elite. No. And actually a demonic Luciferian worshipping elite. They are openly doing it now because they're that crazy. They are crazy. You know, who is Lucifer if not just a criminal? That's basically what a devil is, isn't it? A criminal. So, you know, like I say, I have been trying to share this stuff for years, and as Michael has himself as well, and it is time now that we start getting together. And as I say, I will leave you all the links. I really strongly advise you to check out his Great British Mortgage Swindle. I'm going to be buying the DVD, so share this, talk about it, start talking about real stuff in your family homes. Home is where change begins. Start talking about reality rather than, you know, your casual day-to-day conversations. We need to start talking about what is really going on. Forget the xenophobia about Muslims and immigrants and all this stuff. We need to focus at, look, what is happening to our nation? What future is there for our children? Why have we brought our children into this world? Okay? Why have we brought our children into this world? My grandfather gave his life for this country, for me, and I have never forgotten that sacrifice, and I strive to honour his life and everything that men like him and women like my grandmothers suffered and struggled through so much for. So, love and God bless to everybody, and like I say, check out the information, get awake, get aware, get active, get informed, and inform others.